Everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Tim Macy Show. And if you're still listening, I don't know what to tell you. I'm just glad you're here. We are diving right into this podcast. My friend Bob Tompkins has no prep, no nothing. We're just going straight in. So forgive
Raw
us.
dog.
That sets the tone for how this conversation is going to go. My friend Bob Tompkins is a little raunchy, a little rough around the edges, a little bit a guy that runs his own race, I will say. And what's been fun about watching him and being friends with him and growing a business with him and watching him grow his business is that he's been able to do it while still being rough around the edges, rough, Bob. So I love that you built your business being authentically you. But I do though, like we talk about all the stuff that you're doing, which is always fun. We're constantly talking about what you're doing. You just FaceTime me the other day and we were talking about some content stuff that you're working on. But what we rarely talk about and what I don't really know about is what it looked like when you got started. So
Mm.
what I know is that you were a Remax agent and you made the Old Town Realtor video and you blew up. That's when I know Bob Tompkins. But I want to go a little bit further back. Like, what made Bob Tompkins get his real estate license and what did that look like? Like, what was on your mind at that time? Bring me back there.
I mean, so we just want to go back to how far do I feel like there's a little bit of context that listeners may need when I go that far back. So here, I'm going to hit you with an elevator pitch of my life story. How about
Give me
that?
the origin story.
The
Yeah.
origin story. Okay. So for those of you who don't know, I was raised in a real estate family. So both my parents are real estate agents. My mom got licensed in 2001 and I was 8 years old. My father got licensed somewhere in like 2010, somewhere around there. I was in high school. He just kind of got his license to help my mom. But I grew up, when I was 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, going to showings, going to open houses, watching my mom leave basketball games to take phone calls. That's what it was. It was just everything that a realtor deals with every day. I watched growing up and decided at a very young age, I was never doing that. That looked awful and there was no chance you could get me to do it. I actually went to college, went to Anderson University, Anderson, South Carolina, to be a pastor. So I went to be a pastor, studied Christian ministry, dropped out when I was 21, had a couple moral failures that a pastor shouldn't have. So I went into bartending and massive 180 shift, got into bartending and my life basically went down a black hole, went down an absolute, just as dark and deep as you can imagine someone's life getting is what happened. Made a lot of bad mistakes, a lot of things. And one day I woke up, it was my birthday. I was turning 23 and I woke up hungover as all get out on my couch, rolled over, had some like movie or TV show playing from the night before on the TV. And I was like, I have got to do something else. This ain't working. So I called my mom and I said, if you'll pay for my real estate license for my birthday, I'll stop bartending. And as you can imagine, as a mom who thought she had raised a preacher, me telling her that I would stop bartending was music to her ears. And she very quickly sent me the money to pay for real estate school. I started the next week and got my license in June of 2016.
I love it. That's a great story. And I bet a lot of the people listening took something from it. The thing that I took from it though was a lot of people will say I was raised Catholic or I was raised Protestant or I was raised in the Mormon church. I really like that you led with I was raised real estate. like that's what you said. I was raised in a real estate family. And yeah, that's definitely interesting because now that we have kids, right? Brad, Katie, you like it's funny they're growing up real estate, which is something that I never thought of until you
I hate it for them.
just yeah, yeah, never thought of it until you just said it. But look, so you decide to stop bartending and go to school. Your mom's gonna pay. Wonderful mom. Like I love your parents. Your parents are the best.
Shout out.
So right. So here's the thing. One, the thing that stuck out to me too is why would you stop bartending? Like you have to keep the money going, right? Did you stop bartending or did you just keep going?
Oh no, so the first year I had my license, I was part-time. So
Okay.
I did both for about a year.
Okay. And then what was your perspective on getting started in real estate when you got started? What was the game plan coming into it?
So the game plan was I was just real nice to my mom and gave her a shout out, and now I'm about to be real mean to my mom. So if you're listening, PJ, sorry. The motivation and the game plan going in was I had watched my mom sell real estate, and the thought that had hit me on that sofa was, shit, if my mom can do this, I bet I could do it better. So the
Yeah.
motivation was I looked at a woman who I didn't realize how hard she worked. And I thought, like, she can't be working that hard. She's making six figures. I bet I can outwork her. I bet I can make six figures. And that was the motivation. So I had no clue really what I was supposed to do, but I knew I had a good resource to be able to tap into to ask questions and work on things as I got started. And because I had very little direction and I'm a very difficult person to tell what to do, I did not listen to any of the brokerage training when I got started at Allen Tate in Greenville, South Carolina. And I just started messaging all of my Facebook friends and was like, hey, got my license. You need something, let me know. And I went through an entire list, which I think was at the time was about 1,200 people, and sent a message to every single person on that list, which actually ended up producing my first 3 deals in the business.
So tell me about that. Like, what did the first 3 deals look like? Tell me about the most memorable first deal that you had.
Well, the first, you never forget your first. So my first was Luke and Becca Harden, the great people. I actually still know we work out at the same gym together. We go to church together. They responded to me, and Luke was like, "Hey, actually, we're about to start looking next week." I mean, this is like I've been licensed. We're talking green. I've been licensed for like a day, and he's like, "Oh, we're gonna start looking in like a week." And my immediate thought was, real estate has got to be the easiest shit anybody's ever done.
Ah,
I was like, I've been licensed for 24 hours, and these people are like, let's go buy a house. Their price point was like mid 200s. So I'm sitting here, I'm already calculating commission checks. I'm like, dude, they're going to buy this house. I'm going to, like, I had a terrible split, egregious split with Allen Tate. Like, they are criminals. But I was like, okay, let's start looking. I'm going to make like 4,500 bucks on this. I was like, this is awesome. So then it was not, because we had to look at like 35 houses. In the meantime, no one else is telling me they want to buy a house. It's just these guys. We had to look at like 35 houses. We finally find one that works. And I realize I don't know any home inspectors, nor have I listened to my broker or any of the trainings or whatever. So I did what any good realtor would do. And I Googled cheapest home inspector in Anderson, South Carolina. Found a guy that had no business doing home inspections. He came and did the home inspection and somehow negotiated some repairs, found our way to the closing table. And I received a check that, of all the deals I've ever closed, didn't deserve that one, but got that check. And then we were off to the races after that. But it was a humbling experience, the first deal, because it was like, I realized very quickly, I was like, I don't know what I've gotten into. This is way harder than I thought it was going to be. I, I'm I don't know basic things like just who to call for a normal contract thing. It grounded me very quick. If I'm going to have success in this business, I need to do a better job of building people around me and educating myself on the process so that I'm not just meandering my way through deals.
love that. I think, it's 2024. I got my license in 2015. So this is a weird year for me because next year I'll have been in real estate 10 years, which just seems weird. Like
Yeah,
it doesn't feel like that long.
then you become the guy who's like, I've been licensed for
I've been in the business for 10 years. And like it's a thing. And obviously my business and your business look totally different than they did when we started. And I think
I
for
still sell
me,
houses.
well, I just closed on a listing, all right? And I'm
Just,
going to a listing appointment
I'm just
Friday.
busting
So
your balls.
let's go. But when I look at my business, it's totally different. And I think it's always evolving. If you're listening to this podcast, I hope you're someone who's constantly looking to evolve their business because the world's always changing, all that fun stuff. But when I do look back, I would say my first chapter of my real estate business was probably my first 3 years. I like to look at chapters of my life and chapters of my business. Obviously, joining Real 3 years ago was like a start of a new chapter. And when I look back at that chapter, there's a lot of things that are like foundational that I took with me that I've pushed through in everything that I do in the business that really helped me get to where I'm at today. When you look back, obviously you did business a lot different, things looked a lot, but what are some of those foundational things that when you started set yourself apart and were some of the fuel on the fire to get you where you're at today?
Yeah, so I'll tell people the first thing, and this is normally where I lead when people are like, "Hey, what got you going?" Because I tell people I was a part time for a year. I still bartended. I was working at Allen Tate, and the thing though with Allen Tate was there was nothing that really had to scare me into the business. Like I was able to just dabble in it. Very high splits, like paid to the brokerage, but that meant that there weren't a lot of fees for me. Like, or at least my understanding of real estate at the time was that if you didn't have high fees, it meant that you had a high split. And that was, my basic understanding of it coming from a mom that worked in a very traditional brokerage. I looked at everything and I was like, you know what? I've got to put myself in a situation to either sink or swim. And I don't know what that looks like, but if not, I'm going to end up closing 2 or 3 deals every year. I'm going to be bartending to supplement my income for the rest of my life. And I didn't get my license to keep bartending for the rest of my life. I got my license, so I stopped doing that shit. I made the move a year in to go to Remax. And Remax, high fee, better split, but high fees. And I was like, you know what? Sat down with Christine. I was like, I'm going to have this capped model within Remax. So I got a little bit lower fee when I first moved over there. So instead of the traditional $1,000 a month or whatever it is, I had like a $300 a month bar tab I had to pay to my broker to keep going. And at the time, me and Christine had about 2,400 bucks in the bank. So when you put that together with some MLS dues and whatnot, I was like, we got 5 months, 5 or 6 months, sink or swim, baby. If I'm not doing this 6 months from now, we're going to have no money and I'm going to have to quit. So it was like, we're going to find out, we're going to run and find out is what we're going to do. I moved my license over to Remax, and that immediate pressure of, hey, should have got off the pot, bro. I pushed out a big old number 2 and started working, and it paid off. I mean, that move was foundational for me because I either have to do this or I'm going to eat or I'm not. And it seems very basic, almost seems trivial to say like that's what it took, but I had a safety net. And I tell a lot of my agents that come onto the team or that come in as newer agents, as long as you have that safety net, you're never going to be as successful as you want to be in this business because it's too easy to have a job that's just good enough to just cover the bills. And every time you close, it's gravy and you're able to go do something a little bit extra and you're able to plan that trip. And that's why so many people end up staying stuck as part-time agents because it's like, hey, I made 15 G's this year selling real estate. And because of that, we went to Disney World. I got a new laptop. And yeah, I got hit on taxes a little bit, but who really cares? I got that new laptop and that Disney trip. Meanwhile, they're still living paycheck to paycheck. And that's not what I wanted. And I had to remove the safety net to put myself in a position to sink or swim, period.
I like that. We've been talking about this a lot. I think so much of courses and coaching and everything else is, systematize your business, and which systems are great. No knocking systems. But there's this underlying message that, hey, get to the point where you can put your business on cruise control. Set it and forget it. It works for you in your sleep and you just go do the thing. And here's the thing. In my experience, your business is either growing or it's dying. It's growing or it's contracting. There's not much cruise control. And the problem is when you do well, things get easier and you want to be able to hit cruise control. When in actuality, you're either pouring in and growing or you're going to be contracting. And that's what we saw when 2022 hit
Yep.
is you had a lot of agents who had it kind of easy 2020, 2021. So the best markets we've seen beginning of 2022. And then the thing pulls back. And guess what? Now you got to go out and do new agent stuff, right? Now you got to go back out, do open houses again. And you're like, oh, wait a second. I'm past open houses. I don't do those anymore. I'm a
Right.
successful agent. And I can tell you, we talked a lot about, I think you were on some of these calls, the new agent mentality. Because when I was a new agent, same way, I was crawling through hoarder houses filled with cat poop just to try to find a deal. Like I'd do anything when I was a new agent, but we lose that new agent mentality. And so sometimes maybe this could be a little dangerous, but you got to figure out how do you put yourself back in in that situation where you are a little uncomfortable? We seek comfort, but comfort doesn't provide us with the motivation that we need to do the work. And so I don't like, obviously you shouldn't go put yourself in negative situations, but you
Right.
do have to add friction to your life so you'll go take the action.
Comfort's the enemy of progress. So, like,
Yeah.
as long as you're comfortable, you're not going to move forward. Like, we all know the feeling. You've had a great night's sleep and those covers just feel real good. And, like, yeah, you're supposed to be at the gym at 7 in the morning, but everything's just hitting just right. And I think I'm just going to lay here for a little bit. In that situation, the progression of your body and your health is taking a step back because you're comfortable. And
Yeah.
the same thing happens to us in our business. I mean, listen, it would have been very easy later in my career in 2020, where I'm sitting here turning and burning 35 to 40 deals a year. I'm making a quarter mil in Anderson, South Carolina, which is a ton of money down here.
Yeah.
And it's like, I could have been very comfortable and just been like, hey, you know what? Like, this is what it is. And I think it was right before I moved my license, I to real. I was like, you know what, man, like contentment is the enemy. And I had a lot of people, they're like, hey, it's not bad to be content. And I'm like, listen, it's not bad to be content. But you have to realize that in your contentment, you're going to find hardship later because you're not dealing with the hard stuff now. Like there's that whole saying of like, hey, you get to choose your heart. And it's a lot of times in real estate, it can be hard right now or it can be hard later. And if you decide that you're happy with the comfort and the contentment of today, then you're gonna have to deal with difficulty and hardship in the future. And I know both of us, I know because we chat often, like our mindset is we'd rather deal with it now. We'd rather work through the problems, deal with it now, because hopefully in 5 years it means we won't have to. Now, are either of us wired to shut it off 5 years from now? Probably not. We're probably saying we're going to shut it all off. And then 5 years from now, we're going to be like still doing the same thing because I don't feel like when you have a mindset of like constantly improving yourself and getting to the next level and doing the things, like you're never going to be okay with where you're at or who you are. You're gonna be like, I always can do more. I can help more people. I can do more things. And that's what you end up doing. But it's one of those things that if you're going to find that comfort zone and that contentment, you're going to try and really find a great work-life balance. It's like, great, just know that around the corner, it's probably not going to be so easy.
Well, not just that. I had a good talk with Chris Benjamin about this too, where
Well, Everest.
yeah, oh the Everest talk. And when you're pursuing comfort, I think what happens is when you, at least in my experience, you get there and you realize it's almost sometimes depressing because it's like, wait a second, did I just work so hard so I can do nothing? Like this doesn't make any sense.
Right.
But I think there's a balance in that like if you're wired this way and you're constantly pushing forward and it's never enough and it's never enough, that will lead to great success. I think the balance is being able to stop and be content when you need to be,
Yeah.
and then also, like, you can push forward. Like, it's, I start thinking about the goals and stuff that we have for this year, the goals that we have for building the business, the goals that we have for the industry, all this other stuff. And there is this little voice in my head, and it's like, are you done? Like, what else do you want? So, you know what I mean? But that's how we're wired. On the same hand, it can get depressing if we miss a goal, if we get caught up in what we want to do. We need to also have this ability to take a step back and remember that Bob Tompkins, that was a bartender. To remember that Tim Macy, that was fresh out of the Air Force and pushing a lawnmower at apartment complexes, stepping in dog poop. Right? Like, I started at $10 an hour and worked my way up to where I'm at today. It's a constant, not constant balance, but it's a healthy exercise to be pushing yourself, to be keeping yourself uncomfortable so you can push forward. And then also at the same time, being able to acknowledge how far you've come and acknowledge the journey and be grateful for where you're at as well. And so balancing those two as you get going in your business is not an easy thing to do. But man, it helps out a lot with the mental health if you can pull that off as you get rolling.
I do think there's a time, like, this is just me, but I feel like there's a time and a place for when you peel back because I mean, or when you're like, hey, all right, let me cut the engine off, get a little bit of rest. Like, I don't ever want to hear somebody in the first 4 years of their
Yeah.
business being like, oh man, like I just need like some time. Dude, you don't have it. Like
Yeah.
right now, you don't have it. I look back and it's funny to me because after I made that move to Remax, basically my entire time at Remax was a blur. And not because it was good or bad or whatever. It was just because my head was down and like I was working. And it's funny, it's like you finally come up from for air and you're like, oh my God, like my surroundings are a lot better than they were when I went underwater. Like it's like, gee, this is great. You have to push yourself to be like, all right, time to get back in the water. Like
Yeah.
you can't just chill there and be like, oh man, I'm gonna enjoy this. Because there's green. I mean, listen, they always say the grass ain't greener. It's like if you keep swimming, the scenery gets better. Like it's like you got to get back in the water. Otherwise, you're just going to stay where you're at. And the tide's going to pull you back to where you were before.
If you're building a business, I'm not a believer in work-life balance. And what I mean by that is when you're building a business, your work is your life. Like that's it. Like,
When
Alice
you're
was going,
pouring a foundation,
yeah.
you only have so much time before the concrete cures.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good one. I like that. But it's like Alice was coming to open houses with us. I mean, we didn't have weekends. Any little trip that we took was disguised as a vacation, was actually a work trip, right? Like I was going to meet agents in some other area or something. Like we didn't actually take a vacation until a couple of years ago. Our whole life was our work and everything was work. But guess what? If we did that and we poured in and we did the work, our work ended up giving us a great life. But I think too many times we talk about wanting the life before we've put in the work. We want the balance before we've built the thing. And I think we talk too much about work-life balance when we're getting started, when really like the more unbalanced people build the better businesses and then they get the better life on the back end. But the back end is a lot of times 3, 5 years down the road.
I have very few people in the industry that prioritize life over work that then have to like that are ever asking the question, how do I balance how do I find work life balance to where I like really enjoy my life or whatever? It's like, no, you're prioritizing life. They will shut off work all the
Yeah.
time at the expense for their life all the time. The person that struggles with work life balance is the person that works because they work. And then they're like, how the hell do I get a little bit of life mixed into this? Because I am like this, this all I know how to do. And it's those people ascend to the top. Everybody I know, that's their work life balance problem is not a matter of working more. It's a matter of working less. I don't know anybody that's like, I got to figure out how to balance work life. And the problem they're facing is they need to work more. It's always the other way around. If you want to get to a place where you need to figure out work life balance, work. And then you'll need to figure it out.
I think I hear the agents that are like, "Hey, I have to set my boundaries with my clients, and I'm not going to work after this time, and that's whatever." All that stuff's great, but I just want to know how much of a business do you have? Do you have a business like where you're totally fine and you're willing to lose business because you're not willing to work? I think most of the people that are saying that again are looking for the easy before they take that. The other thing is, in my opinion, if you have something set up where I call some agents and they're like, "Hey, I only answer my phone between this time and this time. These are my working hours." Look, if that's the life you want, I I'm with it. Design the life you want. I'm big on that. On the same hand, you better have a business that allows you to hire someone that is available to show houses when you're not. You should have a business where you can hire someone that's available to cover things when you don't want to. But until you've built that, I think it's crazy to set those kind of boundaries.
You're going to get me ranting.
Well,
Or you're
that's
going to
that's
get me.
always my goal, man.
Yeah. One of the things that absolutely drives me nuts, and I think part of it's a generational thing. I'm a young millennial. I know you're like a middle-aged millennial, but I'm a young millennial, and right behind me, just 4 years behind me, are Gen Zers. And there's this attitude between like 25 and 35 that so many people get in the business, they start working with someone and they have this idea of just entitlement to the client. I'm going to set boundaries and that client's going to use me and this is my business and this is how it is. And it's like, no, man, you are dealing with the general public. Like, how ignorant to sit here and say, I'm going to work from 9 to 6. I'm not taking business calls after 6. And then I'll call them back in the morning when that person works 9 to 5 and commutes home from 5 to 6. When are they going to want to meet you for their listing appointment? When they get home, When or on the weekends? When are they going to be able to see new houses? They're going to be able to see them in the evenings or on the weekends. And it's like, you can't sit here and try and construct this life that is outside the bounds of your clients. It's like you have to conform to your client's needs. You're not entitled anything. Because I'll tell you this, if you think you're entitled to it, I'll come take your business. And I'm not going to apologize for it when I'm cashing checks. That is what it is. And it's like this is a eat or be eaten business. And the way you eat is you say, fuck boundaries straight up. It's like you can set boundaries. I'm in a position now I can set boundaries. I sent a message out to some clients last night. They have reached out to me. I was like, hey, sorry for a little bit of a delayed response, busy day. What's your availability tomorrow? They messaged back and they were like, can you chat tonight? And I said, no, like I'm with my kids. I don't want to talk to you. We can talk in the morning. If that's enough to not hire me, fine. I've built the business where I'm eating. Like, so I'm fine if I don't get to eat off of your plate today. That's fine. But when you're sitting here, if you're an agent that you're like, man, every commission matters, you haven't been able to afford boundaries yet. And this business is not like, listen, it's hard. We know it's hard, but it's like in the grand scheme of a lot of different businesses and what you can do, it is not that hard to build a business to a place where you can turn down bad clients. But in the early years, the only way you get to the point to turn down bad clients is
Taking
you
bad
just
clients.
deal with the most insufferable people for 4 or 5 years. I had a dude that was blowing me up the day my daughter was born about like an offer on his house that hadn't even come in yet. And I'm taking the phone call. I'm it, and he changed his tune when I said I'm holding my 30-minute-old, and he was like, "Oh shit, my bad. I'll call you back." But like, I'm not ignoring him because I've got a newborn in my
Yeah.
arms. I gotta eat, bro.
You
Like,
got to
I gotta
provide for
make
that
money.
newborn.
I gotta provide for my newborn. And listen, at that time, it's like, yeah, I had $30,000-$40,000 in the bank account. $30,000-$40,000 doesn't last very long. Not when you got a newborn. You got to feed that newborn. I don't know if you know this. I know you know this, but diapers and formula ain't cheap. It ain't cheap. It is so easy to get comfortable to say, oh, I've got a little bit of money in the bank, or I've got some other clients I'm working with. Like, for context, when I took that phone call, I had the 30 or 40K in the bank and I had 13 other homes under contract. And I'm still taking that phone call because it was important. If I ever wanted to get to the place that I didn't have to take phone calls, I had to take those phone calls.
I do think too, like you said, there's this obligation thing that kills me. We see in the Facebook groups or something that agents complaining about a buyer that ended up going with some other agent or something else. And you can tell that this agent feels like they're owed something. That buyer should be obligated to have worked with them. It's like Sharon, our company president, says at the start of a lot of his meetings, like, I'm Sharon Srivatsa, the company president. And what that means is I work for you. I am here to serve you. And I don't know. Obviously, there's a lot of ego in our business, but at the end of the day, people are getting used to I can order something on Amazon and hit a button and it shows up the next day. I can flip through Netflix. I can watch whatever I want right now. I don't wait for anything in my life. And then I get to a real estate transaction. People's expectations of waiting is not the same as it used to be. And so you can be upset about it or you can just do something about it. And my one little piggyback on what you were saying, I agree. When you're getting rolling, pick up the phone. You're always picking up the phone. Awkward things that like I've missed. I've missed a lot of moments. I have. It is what it is. But I can tell you what, I've missed a lot of moments, but we've made way more than I've missed because of what we've been able to build. But I will say, I'd encourage people who are thinking about how do I get my time back? Most of the way is make more money. Revenue solves most problems. And the second thing is you probably need to hire somebody. Like hiring somebody good is the way you get your time back. That's the way to go in my opinion.
I look at where I'm at now and the things that I'm able to do and the time I'm able to have back. It's because I have the staffing.
Yeah.
Not because I just set a bunch of boundaries. Like, sure, I have boundaries and we have more regular work hours and we can dictate some of that stuff. But the part of the reason we can dictate that stuff is because we have staffing and we have other people to hand stuff off to. And it's a legitimate business. It's not just like me running around like chicken with my head cut off, but it's like, you want to buy time back. That's how you do it. But so this is an interesting thing, is you have people that they don't understand that, okay, I've worked and worked and worked and worked. Now I've got my business. I make 250, $300,000 a year. Now, in order for me to get to $500,000 a year, you know what you have to do? You
Pay
got to go
somebody
back to
60.
150.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you have to go back because you have to hire people and you have to pay them so you can leverage that and get to the next level. And this entitlement of people, dude, I get so fed up with it. This entitlement of like, oh man, like I'm making my 300 and I don't want to give up. Oh, I don't want to pay a videographer that. I don't want to pay an operations manager that. I don't want to pay an assistant that. I don't want to pay a buyer agent that split. It's like, what are we doing here? Do you want to grow or do you just want to hold on to what you have? And there's nothing wrong if you want to hold on to what you have, but you have to understand to hold on to what you have, you have to continue to put in what you put in to
Yeah.
get out
You
what you.
never you never get that time back. And I will say, look, now that we're ranting on agents who maybe have too many boundaries up on their time as
Yeah.
solo agents, because look, essentially that's what we're talking about. If you're a solo agent and you have this stuff out there that's, hey, I only answer my phone after this and this and that, it's like, man, like that's just not the way the world works. But I say all that because I do think it's probably those kind of agents in that category that hit that level where the only way for them to get their time back is to level up, is to reinvest in their business, is to invest in someone else to get their time back. But let's be honest, we're talking about, hey, you need to do it. It's not an easy thing to do. Hiring someone, we go to real estate school, we learn how to do the real estate transactions, we go to real estate conferences, we learn how to sell more houses. Hiring people is not something that we're really taught or spend a lot of time on doing, but it's the key to so much of upward growth.
I think it goes back to a lot of people get into this business. They look at it from the outside and they're like, oh, real estate looks like I can do a couple of things. I can make a little bit of quick money. And the outside perception is you work for a broker. So you come in and the broker's the one that's running a business, not you. So people get in and it's a little bit of a shell shock because then they realize, oh my gosh, wait, I'm the one running the business. This broker just has set services they provide to me. It's not like they're doing anything else for me. It's just they have these few things. And that's great. I mean, they exist because they have to, which is cool, I guess. But it's like, I then have to build a business on top of that. And most people don't understand that. And I think part of it's failed education in real estate. People don't understand it. I think it's that brokers don't want to tell them that up front. Like, I have people call me that are new to the business and they're like, hey, should I do this? And I'm like, absolutely not. There's no reason you should get into this business unless you want to take on running a business. And it is a different approach. It is a different approach than any other job you're just going to look at as something that you can get in 3 to 6 weeks. In real estate, you can get into it 3 to 6 weeks, but you need to have money that you're putting into it. The fact that I got started as a part-time bartender with no money, I can't believe I made it through the first year because
Yeah,
I had no
I,
money.
I was pushing a lawnmower and driving Uber.
Like, how the hell the two of us ever made it to where we're at is incredible because
Yeah.
it's like we didn't have seed money. And for a
No.
lot of people, if you want to be successful in real estate, you got to have seed money because you got to be able to survive without closing anything for a little bit. And then once you get going, you got to be able to make some key hires and leverage your time back so you can close more stuff. And it's like, it's amazing we ever made it to this point. But if somebody's new to the business or thinking about getting into the business, it's like you have got to understand it is a business you're running, not a business you're working for. It is a
Well,
different, it's
and
different than what it looks like on the outside.
yeah, and I think, look, I don't think that everybody in this business is probably great at building a business. There's a lot of great agents that are amazing at being a real estate agent. They're amazing
Mm.
at showing buyers homes, working with people. They're great with people and they're awesome. I think more and more as things change and everything, I really see a team being a good fit for a lot of those agents who aren't ready maybe to try to build a business around the market that's coming. And when I say the market that's coming, I don't mean that in a bad way, but as technology changes, as these lawsuits settle, as these other things happen, I think real estate is going to look different in the
Mhm.
next 2 years. I don't know how, like, I'm not sitting here trying to predict what it's going to look like, but I can tell you that teams with great systems and are probably going to do well. And I'm not a big, like, I'm big on the solo agent. I'm not Mr. Solo agent suck. You have to be on a team. But I do think there's a lot of agents that are looking to get their time back that may not be a best fit to build a business, that may be a good fit to join a, let me harp on this, a great team, because most teams suck. Let's be honest. Most teams are just, let's bring in, they're like brokerages. Let's bring in as many agents as we can. We'll see if any of them work out. Oh, great. 10% of them work out, and those keep going. So I'm not saying join a team. I'm saying there's some great agents out there that should be joining a great team.
And I think agents need to understand the same way all right, let me back up. When I was new to the industry, I ended up going to Allen Tate to work. It was a boutique firm in Greenville. They're still here. It was Wilson Associates, very like high end sort of brand. And I interviewed with them because I went in and I thought I need to be interviewed. And I think even agents need to be reminded of this. You're not being interviewed anywhere. You're interviewing them. Now, I will say, if it's a good team, I like to think my team is a good team to work for. Like, I will interview you because I have a select number of spots on my team, a select number of leads. I'm going to choose who I pour my time into wisely. I've made the mistake in the past of having unwise investments of my time, and I'm not making those mistakes again. Good teams will interview you. If they're not a good team, or if it's just a brokerage, you're interviewing them. And they'll take you as long as there's breath in your lungs and a pulse in your veins. That's all it takes. So you have to be very aware you're going in and interviewing them. And if that person runs a business in a way that they make it clear that they're interviewing you, that's the sort of person you want to work for, because that person's going to have standards they're going to hold you to. They're going to have systems that they run on, and they're not going to take anybody in, like just anybody with a pulse. There's some things that you have to pay attention to your point of like, hey, you need to join a good team. It's pretty easy to identify what a good team is, because if they're like, hey, let me sell you on why you should join mine,
Yeah.
then don't join them.
Yeah. Yeah.
If the first question though is like, why should we bring you onto our team
Yeah.
versus what do you want to know about my team? Those are
Yeah.
two very different first questions, and they communicate a very big underbelly.
Listen, if you are a great agent and you are in this, maybe you're in this place. I think a lot of people are in this place of, should I join a team or should I keep trying to do this on my own? If you go to that team lead and it seems like they're taking anybody, not a good sign. If they're like, hey, we're actually not really taking on agents right now, that's a good sign. Like, honestly,
Right.
don't stop that conversation. If a team lead says, hey, we're not really taking anybody on right now, that's a good opportunity to try to deepen that relationship with that team lead, because chances are they're running a better team. And so I'd be looking for the teams that aren't just taking on warm bodies. If you're a good agent, if you're a new agent, look, some of those boiler room teams where it's like, hey, we take on agents, we got a bunch of Zillow leads, the best agent's going to win. If I'm a new agent, I don't know. I like getting thrown into the fire a little bit.
If you got
get going.
grit, if you got grit, and
Yeah.
if you're not scared of picking up the phone and being told, hell no 100 times a day, it's a great team to be on.
Look, you got to start somewhere, right?
You
know?
do. You do.
And the thing is, too, though, as a new agent, don't get me wrong, a lot of great teams bring on new agents, but a lot of those great teams, too, it's going to be tougher to get in as a new agent. So if you are a new agent, I don't mind jumping into that boiler room team that's getting a bunch of Zillow leads
Yeah.
where you can outwork everybody else. I love an opportunity where I can outwork other people. Like that's a great deal.
You made a comment about just like the market that we're going into and how things are changing, and I connect a couple of dots here. Like you say, a team that's providing leads, and I think one of the big things that you're going to see in the real estate market that is here is how teams function is going to look different, because before the internet, and I think we have to remind ourselves sometimes that the internet is relatively new. It is not this old, long-standing thing that's been here forever. Before the internet, like, systems were incredible. Like, they were hard to come by because things were not done for you on the internet. It was just a different sort of ball game pre-internet or pre the modern internet. So, like, as real estate companies begin to develop on a tech side, A lot of systems and stuff are going to be built into companies' apps, especially if we fast forward over the next 5 years, how things are going to look. Granted, I think these third party people are still going to exist. I really think teams are going to come down to who's the best at capturing new business and who's the best at providing their people with leads. And team leaders are going to become highly selective on who can actually convert my leads to close business, because leads are going to get expensive if you can't generate them on their own. The ability from a cash perspective to not convert deals is going to go away. You can't just have all this, loss on your leads. So I think the true value that's going to end up coming out of a lot of teams is not coaching or training or just a few systems here and there. It is going to be, can you provide high level systems that are beyond what a brokerage will be providing in the near future? And can you generate business? If it's a team lead that has no emphasis on like, hey, here's how we generate business and here are the things we do to get clients, you should ignore that team. And it doesn't necessarily need to be modern stuff. Like we do a bunch of YouTube. I'm not saying you got to go sit down and somebody's like, oh, we do all this digital marketing, but they should have tried and true practices that convert business. That could be door knocking. If they are the best door knocking team in town, I guarantee you they convert a lot of business if they're the best at it. If they're just like, oh, we make our agents door knock, that's not good. But if they're like, hey, here's our 10-step approach to door knocking and how you convert, and this is the amount of deals we get from it, and we're going to train you and teach you and have you go out there and do it. We're going to provide you with the resources to do it well. It's different, but you need to see what does this look like for generating business, because the teams don't know how to do that. And they're just like, oh yeah, we coach and train you and we have some systems for you. Those teams are going to fall by the wayside.
I agree. I think a lot of it is definitely around systems. Like teams have to be able to generate leads. You're giving up your, commission to the team. It should be an exchange where you can do more business at the team than you could if you were by yourself. And then also the other thing to go into is I believe we spend so much time on our value proposition as listing agents. We have our listing presentation. We talk about how we stand out as listing agents, all this marketing we do, all the stuff that we do for listings, and we don't do any of that for buyers. And so I think too, what you're going to see good teams do or companies do, there's going to be all this stuff emerging that I would be on the lookout for is who's adding value to the buyer side of the transaction, because that's what's going to get more competitive if a year from now buyers are coming more directly out of their pocket to cover commission. You want to be with a team, you want to be with a company that has some plan in place to offer more value to buyers. So, all right. But look, Bob, we didn't even talk about social media or marketing or going in on a niche audience and being yourself and all that fun stuff. But we're already out of time, man.
I mean, dude, I could talk to you for hours.
Yeah. We do. We should just do this more often, huh?
Yeah. I mean, I got a podcast partner that's kind of hard to get to show up. So,
Oh, but you guys are so good. Look,
Uh,
if you've listened to every single episode of the Tim Macy Show and you haven't missed any and you listen to all of them and you shared them on your social media, I give you permission as my listener to go check out the Bob and Brad Show, because you
well,
two.
it's not called that anymore, bro.
Oh, sorry.
It's
My-
full disclosure
Full
with
disclosure.
Bob Tompkins and Brad McCall.
And you two, man, you guys are like just a great little back and forth. I love hearing you go back and forth. So, Bob, where else is a spot for people to find you?
Instagram, Bob Tompkins Realtor. TikTok is just Bob Tompkins. There's not been a lot of content on those platforms for a variety of reasons. I know we didn't get too much into content and social media, but I've got a full-time videographer starting on February 1st of this year. So that's going to change real quick. So, and if anybody followed me back in the day, my content I think is good. So we'll see. People still think it's good.
So if you already follow Bob, be ready to possibly mute him, because he's going to bring a ton of content, but it'll be good content. So you won't, I'm just giving him a hard time. Bob, thanks for hopping on. And yeah, man, I'll see you around.
Yeah, we can do this again. We'll do this again.
We'll see you at Video Blueprint. Bob's going to Video Blueprint. Everybody listening is going to Video Blueprint. So it's going to be great.
I still need to buy my ticket, but I'll do that in due time.
Let's do it. All right, guys. We'll see you on the next one.